Welcome back to Becky Amio Horse Training, and this is Shooter's first ride out to the creek pasture. Well, if we ever make it out there anyway. Stick around and find out how it goes. Hey there, thanks for joining me on Shooter's first ride out to the creek pasture. Now, I've done a pile of groundwork with him to prepare to ride out today, and this is pretty much protocol for what my first ride out looks like. They just get mounted right past the tie rail and all the dogs go with me. So step on, bend head both directions, and then I want him to leave the yard. Now he takes off at a pretty quick pace here. That's all him, that's not me, but I do like a horse with some work ethic, so I'm not mad at it, and I'm certainly not going to try to stop him if he wants to jog right out of the yard. Now, for reference, this video was shot October 1st of 2022, and his last ride was September 27th, and you guys got video of that last ride. That was roughly ride 15, so we're going to say this is ride 16. Riding out to our creek pasture. Now this has a lot of rolling hills. There's a lot more stuff that are distractions and scary things that he's going to have to encounter along the way. As you can see, he already doesn't want to go past this tree line. That's why, if you've been following his series, that's why generally the very first ride out I take is that ride across the road in the pasture on the flat. They can see everything. In this case, he's got to go around the tree line. There's lots of scary farm equipment. My dogs are going in and out of the trees. They're trying to flush birds or find bunnies or whatever. And it's just really, really scary for them, and it's a lot of pressure. So, you know, this is going to be a rough one, you guys. So strap on and hang in there. Now, I apologize in advance. It is really, really tough for JD to stay with me and for us to get the exact footage. There comes a point there where he has to get out ahead of me, and I have to stop and wait for him to get far out ahead of me. He's on a four-wheeler and he's kind of just getting out ahead of us, and I'm trying to navigate the best route to take through this pasture, because you can see it's kind of rolling hills, and on a 2-year-old these hills are really, really tough to get through, simply because of their natural balance at this point, how the saddle is fitting them, you know, how much shoulder and wither they have, whether their feet are up to the terrain or not. Generally, I don't have a foot problem, but they might be a touch ouchy if we come across some rock or gravel. Now, what the beauty of these rolling hills out here is that if I do have one that wants to be a jerk, or I have a stud that won't stop calling or whatever, I just take this pasture from north to south and back and forth, and they hit every single hill until they're done being naughty and they want to start thinking about work. So as I take them out this first time, I try to find a gradual way to take them down the hill. I wish that the pasture was reversed. I wish we went out on a hill, you know, going up, and then came home going down, but instead we have to go out going down, and then we come home going up. So you want to make sure they're kind of tired to start with, and I did my homework with my groundwork. Now, I'm sure the dogs are irritating you guys. They irritate me too. Sometimes they do some really stupid stuff, but these horses have to get used to dogs. The dogs are always going to be around. They're always going to be up in their face. They're always going to be running off across the pasture after a jackrabbit or whatever, or jumping in a water tank. And these horses have to get used to it from day one, whether they work with dogs or not. It's just a non-option in my book. The dogs are always going to be a part of their life. So I take dogs with me wherever I go. And you know, a lot of this behavior, I think, out of Shooter is lack of confidence. You know, having the confidence and the balance to go down these hills. Now, remember, he was not raised out in a pasture. He was raised in a stall, or a small corral, if you will. Never a box stall, but a corral. And when they're not raised out, they don't have this natural ability to take care of themselves, because, you know, stuff out here is spooky and scary. They've never seen it before. He was ponied out here a couple of times, but not enough to make him super overly confident in his own footwork and his own skill level. He's having to navigate. I don't steer them away from holes and cactus and whatnot. They got to find that stuff for themselves. They've got to figure it out, because there's going to be a point where I go off across this pasture after a cow or a bull or whatever, and he's got to go the direction that I point him, and he's got to go as fast as I tell him to go, and then he's got to watch out for the terrain for both of us while I'm paying attention to the direction we need to go. So he has to take responsibility as well. So sometimes coming down these hills is a lot of back and forth, trying to find that balance point. And again, I think a lot of this is just lack of confidence, but this is what you deal with on first rides out. And I could have spent quite a bit more time in the arena with him. I could have spent another year in the arena with him, and it could have helped him a little bit more. He would have matured a little bit more in his body, and he would have had more strength to go out and handle this. But let's pull the Band-Aid off right now and just start taking him out now, because it's going to make him a better individual in the long run. So I find a pretty nice slope to this hill, and that's where I decided to take him down. And you want to be really careful with going downhill on 2-year-olds. I figured this out when I really started riding out in pastures a lot, is that they get very avalanchy. When they start to go downhill and they lose their balance, they speed up and it turns into this avalanche, and they go faster and faster and faster, and they kind of lose control of themselves. That's how you know how well balanced your colt is. And he decides to scale this hill as fast as he can go until we lose JD altogether, and I have to let JD catch back up to us. But you know, ideally I don't want to make a habit of running up and down hills, right? And they are going to spook at rocks. There is not a single horse in my string ever that has not spooked at rocks, okay? They eventually get over them, but they're there, they're out there, and I am trying really hard to get him slowly going down the hill, simply because I'm trying to make this an easy ride, right? Make it, my intention has been from the start to make this a good first experience, right? I don't want to work him into the ground. I don't want to get him so miserable and tired. I'm trying to make this a happy experience, because going out to the pasture is supposed to be fun, right? It's supposed to be a break from the arena. And if I have to make it hard for him, then, no riding is going to be fun for him. So I'm trying to make this a good experience. And he keeps on kind of wanting to speed up and wanting to go back uphill. And that's ultimately where we end up taking him as I get down here to the bottom, and he's trying to pick and choose which way to go. Now, he doesn't entirely know the route home yet, so that's not a concern. But when you see them push really hard with their shoulders one direction or another, I really believe that's a balance thing. That's just them, how they're balancing, how they're navigating at that very moment. Again, he's wanting to go up hills pretty darn fast, and he's always had a big motor, and I'm going to let him do it at this point. If this continues, I'll figure out a way to handle this, and hopefully I'll be able to document it. But because I'm trying to, get his head right out here, I'm going to let him go a little bit faster and let him tire himself out. Now we get to a spot up here where I specifically did not want to be. I had no intention of getting to this point right here. This is a point that is saved specifically for really broke horses, really naughty horses, studs that are calling and screaming the whole time. I don't ever want to be up on the side of the hill like this on a 2-year-old and coming straight down. They're not designed for it yet, right? And it's tough on them. You kind of find out what you have, but and I end up taking him down kind of at angles, not just straight down, because inevitably your saddle ends up their neck. There's not a whole lot there to support them when they're going down yet. You got the breast collar to support going uphill, but you really don't have anything to go down with unless you put a crupper on them. So I gradually start letting him come back down, and again, we see him stall out a lot, and I think again that has to do with his balance. What do? They do 3 things when they lose balance. They go faster, they slow down, or they buck. And we'll see that throughout this entire ride. We'll see him turn into an avalanche. We'll see him pause and want to change directions. I don't recall him bucking on this entire ride, thankfully, cross your fingers. But he's ready to get after it. He wants to go up these hills as fast as he can go, and I kind of let him. You know, I'm kind of guilty of letting him because I'm kind of wanting him to play out. And like I said, normally this ride is reserved for horses that kind of want to be a little bit naughty and have a lot of energy and calling to their friends. So I find myself in the same place again that I was on the previous hill, and I'm right up at the top, about ready to head down, descending into a draw again, right where I didn't really want to be, but he's got a lot of energy and he's got a big motor, so I'm going to keep on making him work. I would have much rather made this ride a lot easier for him, but this is kind of how he's chosen to make it go, and I'm fortunate enough to have the pasture space to be able to work at this. So we go right back up this hill again, and I try to keep him from taking off as fast as he wants to go. Like, I'm trying to control speed a little bit more and throttle him back, and that's what you saw right there as we head up. And it's fine if he wants to power trot on the way up, but I really didn't want to go galloping up the hill again. And again, he's riding with Teddy out there in front, and again, she can be super annoying if she wants to be. Lots of rocks. He just kind of keeps on seeing the same scenery over and over again and having to deal with it. And then every time we get to the top of one of these hills, he has to struggle with the downhill slope again and regaining his footing and figuring out his balance again. But you do this enough times, you're going to create a very, very balanced horse, and you're going to help break up any of that soreness that they have in them from working in the arena, and you're going to open up their mind a lot, and you can find a ton of things to work on them out here in the pasture. You know, one of the only things I really can't work on in the pasture is a slide stop, right? Because I don't have the best footing out here. Sometimes I can't even work on that in my arena, but there are so many different techniques and tools and training you can do, you know, and work on these things without them ever even realizing that they're being trained on, you know what I mean? And he starts to get better about this descent down into these draws, right? He's not having to go back and forth as much. He's walking in straighter lines. He's not stopping on me and pausing. I'm able to walk him on a little bit looser rein here. This draw right here is the last draw in this pasture, and it is actually my favorite draw to ride in. There's so many different things. I can go over this little bit of, there's a spot where the water runs down, and if I go back and forth across that, it creates, you know, different places where they have to work on their footing, and lots of different step-ups and rocks and little trails along the way, all the way through this. And again, if they start to be naughty or something, or they get too much energy, I can go up any one of these hills. And the dogs like to go up to the top of these hills and come down as fast as they can. Coming up out of this pasture, it's really steep. They have to work really, really hard to get out of this pasture. And so it kind of plays them out that one last trip before we get to the top, and then they've got a pretty good mindset on them by the time we get out of here. And that's really one of my favorite things about this pasture is you really want to play one out. You bring them up the hill out of one of this one last draw here, and you can really see him struggle pulling coming out of this pasture. You can see the dogs are pretty tired after working this pasture with me. I know they're off usually doing their own thing, and they put in quite a bit more miles than I do on the horse, but still, it's a warm day for October 1st, and getting him up this last hill after all of the kind of drama that he's gone through up until this point. I mean, we could look at the ride. It hasn't been that long of a ride, you know, save a few minutes here and there for JD to get in a new spot to be able to video me. We've only been out in this pasture for, you know, maybe 20 minutes at the most, but he's already had his groundwork, and now we're scaling these hills, and these hills are totally different from what he's been working on the flat, right? It's a change. No matter how good a shape you're in, as soon as you change the curriculum, it changes how good a shape you're in, right? We get a really, really nice walk here at the end, a good nod and bob, a quiet horse, a thinking horse, a horse that's confident and comfortable, and long loose rein. I'm not trying to restrain him. He's not bothered by the dogs. He's not bothered by the four-wheeler that JD's on, and trusting him up on this hill like this. You know, sometimes some of these hills, these peaks can be a little bit scary, and I totally respect whoever's watching this who struggles with trail riding out. You know, it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I really didn't like to trail ride out. It took a couple special horses to really teach me how to ride out on the trail. I get it. There's some of these peaks where, you know, if they spook and they jump sideways, you're going off the side of this hill. And I really don't necessarily have any hills like that per se, but they could still stumble, fall, and on a 2-year-old, they're not as balanced as something that is more mature. And so there's always that precarious moment where you're thinking, this is kind of steep, you better hold it together, buddy, and make good choices. And so up until this point, we've done a series of testing him to make sure he's going to make good choices, right? That's what starting colts are. That's what our groundwork is trying to find if they make good choices. And even here at the very end, he still picks up at a trot on his own, whether this is anxiety or that last little bit of motor that he has left in him. He's willing to come back down to a walk for me. We get to see really how big this pasture is and how much land I get to ride him in as we head for home here with all of our four-legged friends that, they got to work out too. Now, for sake of time, you guys, I went back out and I rode this pasture several more times and I did not get video. I had to work through quite a few things with him. Going back down this particular draw, I started this ride in reverse when I took him back out the next time. And it was awful, I'll tell you that. I mean, I wish I could have got it on video because it was really, really tough. He was spinning around. He was trying to go back up the hill. He didn't want to go all the way down to the bottom of the pasture. He was kind of miserable. And so I had to work through a lot of stuff with him several more times going out. So what I did is I think I probably put another good 5 rides straight of just riding him out to this pasture and making him deal with it. So I still don't think I got a total of 30 rides on him last fall. But I did come back out and work it right away again. So I'm going to have video here at the end of the series of him working this pasture. Pretty good compared to what he did in this ride and what he did for several more rides afterwards. But it was tough. It took some gumption to get out there and just do it and keep on riding it. And he got better and better. And I'm quite certain that when I get back on him, spring of his 3-year-old year, I'm going to have to go do this all over again as he's matured and his body has changed and he's out of shape and trying to get back into condition again. And we're going to have all that pretending like you've never seen it all over again. And so that's pretty much what we'll be working on from here on out. Nice, quiet ride back home. Long, loose rein. Willing to walk on the flat. And I'm really happy with this. I really want them to walk quietly home. If he didn't walk quietly home, I'd find something for him to do out here. Bend his head around circles, figure eights, backing up, all sorts of different little jobs for him to do to keep him busy. Because once they do get back home, he's gonna need to be tied up. That's the bottom line. We come back in the yard. I don't ever want to just put them away. I want to be able to tie him up and give him a job at the tie rail, basically. And if he was really naughty about coming home, I would take him home and work him right in the arena. I've done that with lots of horses. And so come back through these gates here. We have to go around these trees still. So remember how scared he was going through these trees. We're walking past a bunch of farm equipment. I mean, there is a ton of farm equipment, feeders and rakes and old balers that we take parts off of. I mean, you name it, it's out here. There's old pickups, ranch pickups that aren't used anymore, and he's having to deal with all of it. And, it's just more stuff that he's going to have to see. He's going to have to get used to all of that stuff, right? Coming through this this spot that he was so scared of when we first started. You know, he wants to speed up and get through there. These trees are tough to see through. And again, the dogs are always flushing something out through there. And this last stretch down to the horses where the tack room is the most important part. I don't want him rushed. I want him on a long, loose rein. I want his head long and low. I don't want him talking to his friends. I want him really, really quiet. And as soon as I get down there, he's going to get tied up, and he's going to stay tied up for a little while I work some other horses. If he wanted to rush back to the barn, well, guess what? We'd go right to the arena, and we'd go back to the work in the arena. They always have to go back to work when they go back home. We don't ever want them to look forward to getting back home and going right back to their pen with their buddy, okay? So I really appreciate you guys taking your time to watch this whole video of his first ride out to the crick pasture. Stay tuned. I've got a couple videos left in this series before we start his spring series going back to work in 2023. So thanks again for watching. I sure appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.